David Cameron says he will stay as PM even if he loses the referendum. Oreste Foppiani joins us to tell us what else we need to know about a potential Brexit. Okay, so Oreste, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Now we're looking at this, the potential Brexit. When will David Cameron sort of organise the referendum, and why would you say the date is so important?
The date is important not to lose the momentum of this option. The option Cameron has in front of his political horizon is to be a convincing political leader, because he announced the Brexit during the elections and now he has to keep his promise. But it's also a tool to convince the EU officials and the EU 28 countries that the system has to be reformed. Reformed not only to benefit the UK but also the other countries. The UK wants to have more autonomy vis-à-vis the EU rules. And the date is important because it should be done before the end of 2016. The 2017 deadline, I think it's too late, but Cameron took some time. Why? Because he wants to be a winner at the political poker table in Brussels when he was trying to convince the Brussels authorities plus the other members of the EU that a more autonomous UK would also become an example for other countries. It's a sort of Europe de patrie, the Europe of fatherlands that de Gaulle asked for in the 1960s, which means every country should always keep its own sovereignty. So 2016, it's an important year.
I mean, there's so many different aspects to talk about, but if we look at the armed forces, something which is obviously hugely important, UK are very patriotic about, what would be the situation if they were to leave the EU? How would this be affected, do you think?
Well, the UK has always been more independent than the other countries and extremely connected to the US military system, that is the NATO system, but also the American one. I think that there will be still military cooperation agreements between the United Kingdom and other EU countries, but this would also entail a closer cooperation with the United States in the future and less agreements with the European Union, which is, if at a certain point we thought that the UK was a Trojan horse of the US within the EU, now this will become a reality, which means that the UK will reveal for what it is really, that is an Anglophone partner of the US in Europe. Still independent, but closer and closer to the United States military system, even before the entry of the UK.
Indeed. Now, I mean, obviously investment is a huge issue, but what about, you know, the current investments of British citizens and, of course, businesses? How is that likely to be affected? And also vice versa, if we look at EU citizens and companies who have investments inside the UK, how does it all unfold if there was a yes vote?
Let's say that, as I mentioned you 5 minutes ago, there are stomach perceptions and brain perceptions. The stomach perceptions are, oh, let's get this independence from the EU, and in this way we will have more advantages. But actually, if one really calculates all the benefits of being a UK business within the EU system in a single market, still keeping the British currency, the pound, I think it's an enormous advantage for the British businesses. Although recently there was a BBC survey and they noticed that the opinion of the British business leaders changed from 20 to 40, 45% in favor of a yes vote, that is to leave the EU. This is a bit worrying because Still, I think that the national authorities, the business national authorities in England, but also their counterparts in Europe, they think that being a member of the EU for the UK is still an asset, is an advantage.
It's kind of strange because, as you mentioned, there have been so many U-turns, it would seem, in different stories and just within the UK and on the political side. But if we look at, the Labour Party's position, obviously coming to the forefront with the recent appointment of Corbyn. Yeah. But what about the, vis-a-vis the referendum, UKIP, Conservative Party, Liberal one? How do you see this? What about the different stances and the kind of opposition within the UK? Even if we don't go and mention how the rest of Europe feels about it?
Well, the Labour Party, as we all know, has a more favourable position vis-à-vis the EU, and it would like even to have an EU where the UK would have less power in favour of the UK. But now the Labour Party released this tension against Mr. Cameron, and there's a sort of coalition to favour this referendum. That is to leave the British subjects or citizens to express themselves and to really decide about the future of their own nation. The only party which is a strong supporter of an independent United Kingdom, as you know, is the UKIP, and this is quite questionable, the way they support or they argue the fact that the UK lost power, lost importance or prestige. I think that this is not true. It's only a question of image and perception.
But it does seem as though it will be a huge talking point for the rest of 2016. But thank you so much for coming in today and starting the whole discussion off with us here. Thank you, Oreste.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, well that's all from Oreste and myself, but there is plenty more coming your way on Dukascopy TV, so make sure you keep clicking back. See you soon.